everybody! ¿Cómo están?
Ian Lewis here,
And welcome to Exploring Together.
today we have arrived to our last destination in this trip, the beautiful city of Edinburgh.
You better believe it. Yeah, I got one more trick, but you're gonna be a tough act to follow. To follow. All the people wanna go with.
And oh my god, we have a lot to explore. And honestly speaking, guys, this is a quite challenging video to make. Because there's just so much history, so many things to tell, so many curiosities to explore, that honestly, I don't know where to begin with. But of course, Ian Lewis, the Chilean goat, the Sherpa of the Andes, Sultanian, always makes the very best to give you the very best content. And this, of course, my dear subscribers, will not be an exception.
So the very first thing we gotta understand, Edinburgh is divided in two cities. The first one is the medieval town, also known as the Old Town,
Which is where we currently are and what this video will be about.
Down to this day, you're gonna be a tough act to follow. And you better believe it. Just take a bite and see that it's gonna be too much to swallow. You better believe it. Yeah, I got one more trick, but you.
and the second one is the New Town, and the New Town is from the time of the Scottish Enlightenment.
This video will not be about the new town. The city of Edinburgh originated in the hill that's behind me. It's also known as Castle Rock, and hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of years ago, it used to be an active volcano. But then it solidified and made this very strong, solid rock that later on, during the last ice age, was completely covered by an iceberg. When the glacier melted, it divided and it fell in the south and the north side of the hill. And when the glacier began to melt and slide down the hill, cut and created the shape that the hills has nowadays.
Then, this eroded hill was perfect for a settlement. And even though there were some prehistorical villages in the top of this hill, it wasn't until the 13th century when David I decided to build the castle that's behind me, the Castle of Edinburgh.
And you might have thought, yes, this place looks perfect to put a fortress on the top of it. The reality is that David I was a big fan of hunting, and the area of Edinburgh was way better than Stirling, which is where the kings of Scotland used to live. So yeah, basically that's the way Edinburgh was originated. The king just wanted to hunt. Interesting thing to understand is that from the royal castle, we have this main road that goes all the way down. And this street is called as the Royal Mile. At the very end of the road, we have the Holyrood House. Now, very interesting thing. This road is known as the Royal Mile, but it is not a mile. It is 1.1 mile. That's a true fact. And then, during the medieval times, the city of Edinburgh began to grow. But as almost every huge medieval city, there was a wall. And the city began to grow inside this wall. And the problem that generated was the fact that there was a moment where there was simply no more space to grow. And because of that, the city started growing vertically. And that's why we can see all of these huge buildings behind me.
Something very interesting to understand is the fact that these buildings that were built during the medieval times aren't just high on top.
But in reality, this building has 13 floors. What?
Yes, my explorers, you have heard it, 13 floors. Generally speaking, the entrance goes by the Royal Mile,
Which is at the top of the hill.
but the buildings use the slope of the hill, so basically there are many underground floors.
That is an awesome way to use a hill in your advantage. Now let me take you to one awesome place. inner square, like a patio. Over there we have the Writers' Museum. What I want to show you here is how massive these buildings used to be in the medieval times. So the very first thing we can see is that there are many floors. But in the medieval times, Edinburgh was a very poor city, and that means that it was first of all a dangerous city to live in, and second, it had extremely dense demography. So basically the buildings that we are looking at right now used to have wooden extensions where poor people would live in. And that was also extremely dangerous. If, for example, a fire would happen, that it did happen, many people would die while the wooden extensions would burn. And many people did die.
And there is another curiosity I want to share with you in this place.
During the medieval times, there was no sewer system. And that basically means that the people, in order to get rid of their, you know what, necessities,
they would scream, "Guard the loo!"
which was basically the way to alert people passing down the street
that they were throwing the crap out of the window.
All of this inner square used to be covered by crap.
And if you add to that the fact that Scotland has a lovely weather, where it rains quite a lot, then you would have some really crappy times, literally speaking. And the third curiosity I want to share with you about this place is that the poor people would live in the wooden extensions at the very top of the buildings. But the question is, where did the rich live? Well, if you think about it for a second, you will realize that the lower floor were also full of crap.
And that is the reason why the rich people would live in the middle floors.
We have arrived to our next destination, which is the Market Cross.
A market cross is this little structure that is behind me. It is commonly found in Scottish villages and towns, and it refers to a place where the market is. Therefore, we could basically say that here is where people used to trade,
To buy and sell
their cows.
I just realized that I forgot telling you something about the Market Cross. Going back.
Something that I haven't really explained you yet
Is that even nowadays they are unified under the same crown.
in the old times, Scottish and English people used to have a sort of really bad relationship.
It was like oil and water.
Cats and dogs.
Well, the thing is that they didn't have a good relationship at all. Actually, they had many wars in between of them. And the fun thing, and one of the reasons why I love Scottish people, because they are just so friendly and so much fun, is that they noticed that the English people, they had a lion in their flag. Which of course doesn't make sense because there are no lions in England. Even crazier, Welsh people, they have a dragon. What they decided to do against that, to feel superior to that, they chose an animal more mythical than any other as their national animal. And that's why at the top of the Market Cross we can see a unicorn.
During the 18th century, there was a Scottish movement called the Enlightenment. This movement was a moment where many philosophers of different fields, like engineering, economics, philosophy of course, during this movement, people like Adam Smith, Thomas Reid, James Mill, created and developed theses, theories and understanding of the way that we live. Winston Churchill recognized the Scottish Enlightenment as one of the most important movements in terms of knowledge since the ancient time.
That's when you see the unfair things of life, because the sad reality is that not too many people knows about the Scottish Enlightenment movement. When we talk about Enlightenment, we generally think about France, I guess.
And that it is why the Scottish people decided to exalt themselves.
And in the building behind me, we have some really strange things going on. The very first one is the fact that at the top of the buildings we can see some sphinx from the ancient times. Then we have the statue of Charles II, dressed like a Caesar. And finally, in the building at my right side, we can see some Greek columns, also from the ancient times. Inside of St Giles Cathedral, which is pretty nice, huh? St Giles isn't exactly a cathedral because there is no archbishop. That is why in Scotland it is also known as the High Kirk, which means the High Church. 1603 is the year of the unification of the crown between England and Scotland. However, they were two separated kingdoms for the following 100 years. During this process, the English tried to impose the Scottish the Anglicanism Protestant. The Scottish religion instead is the Protestant Presbyterianism. In Anglicanism Protestant, there is a figure which is the king, nowadays the queen, who is in between God and the people. Whereas in Scottish Presbyterianism, the king or the queen does not have such a power. So when Charles I tried to impose a new prayer book, he sent a priest to St Giles. When this happened, there was a woman in the public called Jenny Gather. She did not accept this new preach, and, in objection, she threw a stool at the head of the minister. It is said that this act sparked a riot that led to the Wars of the Three Kingdoms, which included the English Civil War.
Letting go is not a sin. Oh, counting days, I made it through without someone like you. We're running out of life. Time is changing day to night.
So my friends, let's go to our next destination, but first, beer. I just love this moment of the day.
For you, I'm just unknown. You're not that someone who will find my heart and bring peace to my mind to move on. Oh, 'cause I will find the way.
Wow, guys, this city is so beautiful. I don't think, or at least I don't know, any other city in the world that has medieval buildings like these ones.
Oh, you keep saying fine, but I'm not in line. No, no, not this time. 'Cause I will find the way on my own.
We currently are in the grass market, and the reason why it's called the grass market is because this one used to be the place where the Scottish people would feed the cows. That's very interesting. But you see, there was one more reason why this place was used for. As you may have noticed, this square is way wider than the normal streets that we have seen through the day in Edinburgh. In a big square, you can gather a huge amount of people, and as this square could gather a huge amount of people, it was also the square where the people was executed. Now, in the crazy medieval times, executing a person was something normal. Even more than normal was an entertainment, and people would gather all around this square so they would see the execution happening behind me. In this stone, they used to execute people, and of course, one of the most common ways of executing somebody was hanging them.
That's why we have here the shape of one of these structures that were used to hang people. So here will be people hanging.
And if you wanna hear a no, it's not fun. No, it's not fun. It is a very sad story, but with a happy ending. Go and Google Maggie Dixon. And very close from the grass market, we have our last destination of the day. The most known street of Edinburgh. And one of the most beautiful streets in Europe. Welcome to Victoria Street.
Victoria Street was designed in the 18th century to connect the Royal Mile with the grass market. It is simply an architectonical masterpiece where you will find great restaurants surrounded by a strange mix of medieval buildings and colorful facades.
Victoria Street has many different stores, and of course, as a tourist, it is a nice option to make some shopping. So my friends, I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and if you did, please remember to like, share and subscribe. And I, Ian Lewis, will be seeing you soon. You medieval explorer.
Oh, look at that! People running in skirts. Well done, Scotland.
Back in the road, let's see what do we find. You see, both ways.
Here you can cook whatever you need.
Both the old town that's behind me and the new town, which is where I'm at right now, are considered World Heritage by the UNESCO.